I'm a survivor. I had my brush with this disease almost 23 years ago, and when I look back in retrospect, I almost died. I mean, I was in an ICU. I was not given too many chances to make it, but I survived because of this reason. Because I really wanted to be alive. I wanted to live. Of course, I was lucky. The treatments worked. Everything sort of fell into place. But as I said, I very strongly believe that I survived because the fire inside me burned brighter than the fire that was around me. Next slide, please. Let me start this story as a kid. I was born in Kashmir, idyllic childhood, wonderful place to be brought up. This is, of course, pre the political turmoil there. Parents very well settled. Both of my parents were doctors. I was living the perfect life. And then that political turmoil thing happened. We had to leave home overnight. And pretty much that is a lot of drama for one's life. People have made movies out of it, Kashmir Files and this thing and that thing. And I think that's enough of drama for my life. And I thought that kafi ho gaya. We went through that phase of adjustment, settling down again as a family. Next slide, please. And I finally got into medical college. I was in SMS Medical College, Jaipur. Life was perfect. I was a good student, getting my gold medals and topping exams. I had a girlfriend for 4 years, who was with me for the 4 years. I was engaged to her. No, not my wife. My wife is somebody else. So I had a girlfriend for 4 years. I was engaged to her. I was due to get married. So pretty much life was perfect. I was towards the end of my post graduation. This is a picture from that time. I think you can see the year also, 96, I guess. Next slide, please. And this is when I completed my post-graduation and I sort of was getting into senior residency. I actually joined surgical gastroenterology. I wanted to super specialize in that. But that is the time I sort of fell unwell. And in the first slide, which is with my father, the slide on the right, something had already started growing inside me. I was unaware of it at that point of time. And in the second slide, which is just, I think, 15 or 20 days later, in fact, the jacket is the same, probably the same pair of jeans as well, I had actually started developing symptoms. I remember whenever I used to bend down to tie my shoelaces, I used to feel a sort of a tightness around my neck. And I used to feel this heaviness in my chest. I had gone to Jammu at that point of time. I was working with Kanchan's dad, Dr. Sheetal Singh, God bless him. And I knew something was going wrong. And then within a period of 10 to 15 days, next slide please, I was in an ICU in Tata Memorial Hospital. I was diagnosed with mediastinal non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but I had multiple biopsies initially and they were not picking up anything. Then obviously you can't start treatment blindly. So I had to undergo a couple of surgical procedures to actually prove my diagnosis. So I got cut up in my neck. That didn't work. They were not able to reach my tumor. Then they cut through my chest. I had something which the doctors here would know. I was in superior vena cava syndrome, SVC syndrome, where pretty much your tumor is blocking the big veins coming in, towards your heart. So I was in a pretty bad shape. I was not able to lie down. I was not able to breathe properly. Really bad situation. And then finally, my biopsy came in after these 2 surgical procedures. I was started on chemotherapy, 8 cycles of chemotherapy. Next slide, please. This is pretty much during my entire, chemotherapy. I didn't click any pictures of myself. I hated the way I looked. I didn't like what I was, because I always used to think I'm some cool dude. And when your hair falls off, your girlfriend dumps you. She ran away. And you pretty much don't like whatever is happening in your life. And I took no pictures. This is actually a few months after I completed my treatment. And it is also by perforce, because I was supposed to get a PAN card or something. So this is the only picture I have of those times. I have no other sort of picture in those times. Next slide, please. But मैं ढीठ आदमी हूँ, मैं बहुत ढीठ आदमी हूँ. When I went to Tata Memorial, I actually fell in love with that hospital. I fell in love with the doctors there. I fell in love with the hospital. And I promised myself कि अगर बचा तो यहीं वापस जाऊँगा. अगर बचा तो. And 2.5 years later, after sort of getting through with my senior residency under Kanchan's dad, I was back in Tata Memorial. But this time as a student, as a trainee. And I have these two pictures here. The one on the left is, of course, with most of my colleagues and friends there. A lot of them are now currently heading departments in Tata Memorial. And the one on the right-hand side is very special to me because this girl, I remember, her name is Lucky. She's no longer in this world. I was in my OPD in my thoracic services, and she actually presented with exactly the sort of disease, exactly the sort of presentation that I had. And I remember when I saw her file, I pretty much broke out into cold sweat. You know, it's scary when you see somebody with pretty much the same report, and you sort of start connecting with that patient, and you start saying कि मैं बच गया, शायद मैं बच गया, ये भी शायद बच जाएगी, and she didn't. She couldn't make it. And I remember I was scared. I was really very scared. Next slide, please. But I sort of, time, as I said, time is a big healer, and I am somebody who loves myself a lot. मैं अपना favorite हूँ. And I think I got out of that. I moved to Delhi. That's where I started practicing. And this is 2005, I guess. Next slide, please. And I sort of settled into life. I got a few good breaks. Work picked up. I was very happy. So one would say that this is enough drama for one's life. आपका forced migration हो गया, आपका एक cancer हो गया, उससे निकल गए, girlfriend भाग गई. Enough. मतलब होना इससे ज़्यादा नहीं चाहिए life में drama. But अभी life में बहुत कुछ बाकी था. Next slide, please. When I was in Bombay, actually I met my wife. That's her there, Aisha. And this was also very drama-y circumstances. I was a lot older than her. She is from a different community. And the stupid people that we are, 13 days after I saw her for the first time in my life, we ran away. We eloped. And there was a police case against us. And we had the cops chasing us from Bombay, Maharashtra to Gujarat, where I was actually arrested. I spent 3 nights in a lockup, and I fought for 8 years in court to get myself out of that case because it was a kidnapping charge. You know, kidnapping charges can't be once they're filed against you, they can't be withdrawn. You have to actually, the case has to reach its conclusion. Pardon? She was 18 plus, ma'am. She was 18 plus. So I actually lost in the High Court of Bombay. And that judgment against me was given by a gentleman who was subsequently the Chief Justice of India, Justice Bobde. And then I won in the Supreme Court. So I actually had to go to Supreme Court to get out of this. While all of this was happening, next slide. We'll go to the next one. Next one, please. We actually had a baby. And my son, Kevin, and we forgot to marry. We actually forgot to marry. Because police case, court case, families against us, हम शादी करना भूल गए. Actually, genuinely करना भूल गए. We shifted to Delhi with the baby and we were not married. And we actually didn't think anything was amiss. Till we had to put our son into school. And then I realized कि यार technically तो he's a bastard, right? You know, शादी तो हुई नहीं. So, what the hell am I supposed to do? So we actually got married much, much later. I think we were already 3.5 years after we sort of had our baby. So we got married, and well, now enough drama in life. कि इससे भी ज़्यादा होना चाहिए. Enough हो गया ना? Next slide. Then my wife, hale and hearty, 28, full of life. She started bleeding from her nose. And we ran a few tests, and she was also diagnosed with a cancer. She had something we called an myoepithelial duct carcinoma in her nasal septum. Absolutely rare. I had to go back to my books. कि ये है क्या exactly? She had to undergo 2 surgeries and then a third one to actually correct a complication which had happened in the second surgery. But we made it, right? I am now 23 years post my episode with cancer. Aisha is close to 9 now, 9 years, yeah. Next slide, please. And this is a very special slide. This is the day we were discharged from hospital. We were discharged from hospital. She had a surgical procedure. She had those tampons in her nose. Morning में tampons निकाल के discharge किया. शाम को we went to a party and we got dead drunk. Dead drunk. मेरे को नहीं पता हम घर वापस कैसे आए उस दिन. And incidentally, the anesthetist who had sort of given her anesthesia was also there at the party. And he says, तुम यहाँ क्या कर रहे हो? और ये so that's us, you know. So whenever people talk about, you know, dealing with cancer and whatever, I just think we weigh ourselves down too much with this word. It's a thing which happens to you. It's an illness which happens like so many other illnesses. Face it and move on. Move on. There are more things that will come up in life. पकड़ मत लो इस चीज को कि कैंसर हो गया, ये हो गया. आफत नहीं होगी. Life, if you're lucky, you will move on. Next slide, please. Now, again about Aisha. 6 months after she got through with that last picture was, of course, the day she got discharged. She went in for Mrs. India, and she was one of the finalists there. Yeah. So, अगर मैं पागल हूँ, तो मेरी बीवी भी थोड़ी पागल है. Next slide, please. And this is us today. That's with our other baby, our dog, Thor. Next slide, please. And that's us. We like chilled out in life now. We're happy. Touch wood, both of us are doing fine. Next slide. Again, two of us. And that's our son, Kevin. He's now taller than me. अब तो काफी ड्रामा हो गया ना, है ना? This should be enough. इससे ज़्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए ना? अभी और ड्रामा बाकी है. Next slide, please. That's my mother and my father. Both of them doctors. My father was a pediatrician. My mother was the head of pharmacology. And that little one there is me. I lost my father around more than 10 years ago. He had a cardiac event. And next slide. And then my mother one day gives me a call. She chooses to live alone in Jammu, though I insisted that she should be coming and staying with me in Gurgaon in Delhi. But she has her own place as well, but she doesn't want to be here. She likes it there. One day I get a call that, son, I'm feeling something in my breast. My mother is 70 at that point of time. And I knew that 70, a new lump in the breast can't be good. So I said, Mom, next flight, please come to Delhi. We ran her through a series of tests. Obviously, because I was around, everything happened fast. Within pretty much 48 to 72 hours, we had all the reports with us. It was a breast cancer, diagnosed as a breast cancer. Now, इलाज किसने करना है? Operate कौन करने वाला है? Everybody told me you'll be crazy if you operate your own mother. It's not okay to operate your own mother and, hand her over to somebody else. Probably I would have ended up with Kanchan or somebody, I don't know. But I said, no, man. I mean, I tell people to hand me over their mothers. So I'm going to do it I'm going to operate my own mother. So I remember, operating my mother and a little bit of tremble in the hand, when I started. But once, you give that skin incision, sort of everything goes away. And so I operated my mother. Next slide, please. And this is post-surgery. Again, just a few months after her surgery. And she did pretty well. Next slide. And just last month in August, she celebrated her 80th birthday. And still insists on living alone, still drives her car, is very upset now that मेरे को driving license renew कराना है. अब वो कहते हैं 1 ही साल के लिए renew होगा. नहीं, renew हो रहा है, but just for 1 year. So that is her, major grouse right now. That why for 1 year? Why not for 5 years? So that's her attitude as well. So as I said right in the beginning, I think it's all about attitude. And I don't know, I probably inherited from my mother. I probably imbibed a little from my wife. I don't know where it came from. But none of us sort of allowed ourselves to be weighed down by this illness beyond a point of time. At one point of time, we said, ho gaya, aage chalo. Because life has newer challenges for you. It doesn't end there. Cancer ho gaya, zindagi ho gayi, khatam. No, not that. A little bit more now. Next slide. My sister. She got married. It was a love marriage. And a few months after her marriage, I get a call that her husband, blood cancer hai. Okay. So I say, okay, what type of blood cancer? They say ALL hai. मैंने कहा नहीं वो उतना ख़राब नहीं है, वो दवाई वाई लगेगी ठीक हो जाएगी या ठीक हो जाएगा, इट्स ओके, डोंट वरी, एवरीथिंग विल बी फाइन. 15 minutes later I get a call, no, ALL नहीं है, AML है. तो मैं थोड़ा डाउन हो गया. मैंने कहा यार ये उतना अच्छा नहीं है, बट हाँ मतलब फाइट करेंगे, निकल आएंगे, डोंट वरी. Another 15 minutes later I get a call, बोलते नहीं ALL भी नहीं है, AML भी नहीं है, दोनों है. I said what the hell? And it was, as Dr. Talwar might tell you, a very rare form of dimorphic leukemia where a patient has both ALL as well as AML. And I spoke to my med-onc colleagues. Everybody told me that this is pretty nasty, like a 5% or a 10% chance of actually making it. And I remember asking people in my family that I hope my sister is not pregnant, because most likely ये बंदा तो गया, ये नहीं बचने वाला. Everybody saying कि 5-10 तो 5-10 पे कौन बचता है यार. So ये तो जाएगा. I hope she's not pregnant, because then okay, he'll die, then a little bit of grieving for a couple of years, then at least we can, she can move on in life, she'll get married again and blah, blah, blah. But this girl, she just said, no, I'm not letting this guy go. And she fought. He went through all the treatments, fancy bone marrow transplant and whatever, and he made it. He actually survived. The medical oncologist told her that because he's had so much of treatment, so please for 2 years don't have a baby, because A, we don't know whether he'll actually stay fine. He's fine right now. The disease may come back. It's so aggressive. So it may come back. So don't have a baby for 2 years. And she says, what the hell? मैं तो पहले साल में बच्चा पैदा करूंगी. And she had twins. Those are twins. So मैं कह रहा हूँ खानदान ही पागल है. So but ये पागलपन चाहिए. ये पागलपन चाहिए. Not that कि ये नहीं हो रहा, वो नहीं हो रहा, ऐसे हो गया, वैसे हो गया. Please. I mean, as I said, it's just a disease. Move on. Don't get weighed down. And next slide. And this is, nobody from my family now. This is a friend of mine, the guy. He, when he was, I think, 27, was diagnosed with a tumor of the parotid. Had been operated by somebody else who had sort of spilled the tumor, had positive margins. Then he came to me, I operated him again, we radiated him. This girl at that point of time was not married to him. She was his girlfriend. And the boy's mother said कि इसकी वो बैड इन्फ्लुएंस मेरे बेटे के तारों को इफेक्ट कर चुकी है, उसीलिए मेरा बेटा बीमार हुआ, क्योंकि अपना बेटा तो खराब हो ही नहीं सकता, उसमें कोई दिक्कत हो ही नहीं सकती, लड़की का ही दोष होगा ऑब्वियसली. सो ही गॉट कैंसर अपरेंटली बिकॉज ऑफ हर. And then obviously from the girl side of the family there was this thing about इस बंदे को कैंसर हो गया है, मुंह टेढ़ा हो गया है, blah blah blah, don't get married to him. This is a girl who stuck with her guy. She got married to him, they have a baby. Why I'm putting this slide here? Why I'm putting this slide here? Because I was reminded of that girl who dumped me. Yeah, she didn't dump him, she stood by him. So that is what you want from your family and your friends and your loved ones. Stand by you. Rest, लड़ाई आपने खुद करनी है. That strength has to come from within. But yes, the family has to be with you. They have to support you. Next slide. So basically, a little bit of luck, whether you want to call it God, you want to call it nature, whatever. God will lead you through it. Have faith in yourself. Love yourself. Next slide. And go out and experience life. It's all about life. One life, which also isn't too long. Even the ones who live long is actually not too long. If somebody is 80, you multiply it by days and you realize some 24-25,000 days. That's it. अगर ऐसे सोचो एक दिन तो ऐसे निकल गया, 25,000 दिन कोई बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं लगते. And that's supposed to be a long life, So it's actually not a long life. It's a short life. Go out and enjoy. Don't get burdened by any illness that you've had, anything that you're facing. Face it and move on. Next slide. Thank you so much.